At the time of the shooting, police say the victim was here, first in line at the traffic light at Parkway and North, and that there was a big crowd of people hanging out on the corner, as there often is. What isn't a surprise is it may be coming in late. The expectation was that the worst of it was going to be showing up around 2 a.m. in this area. That would put it closer to high tide. Now the expectation is it'll be more between 3 and 4 a.m., which means the tide will have gone out. Hilton's discovery at the Chevron station was also a chilling jolt for people who live in this neighborhood because they say they know him. They say Hilton and his vans and his dog have long been a fixture here in Murphy-Candler Park. Airport reps say between the on-site parking and the official remote parking lots, there should be plenty of spaces for everybody this Thanksgiving weekend, but they do acknowledge there is a role for the private companies that also run facilities off-site. So let's say you go to one of the more remote of the remote facilities, Park Atlanta, pull in, find a space, and by the time you step out of the shuttle bus here at the terminal, the elapsed time has been 13 minutes in our unscientific survey. And in a real estate market becoming increasingly crowded and tough, industry experts say a rising tide of foreclosures can have serious implications for people who are making their payments. CharlesMolineaux standing by at the Omni Center, World Congress Center. Charles, what can you tell us from there? We are right basically between the World Congress Center on one hand and the Omni Hotel on the other. And yeah, the debris is actually all over the place. You can see stuff that is blown. There's a big piece of foam, something under here. We're looking up at the walkway in between the old and new versions of the Omni Hotel. I just spoke to a man who said he was in that walkway when whatever this was blew through here. He said he was just on his way through and said, sure enough, that sounds like a train. And windows started shattering, although for a while there, he said he thought it was an earthquake as debris was flying around. I talked to a couple who say they were in a taxi cab and watched the winds swirling around in all directions, saw green and blue flashes in the sky. They did not necessarily see what they thought was a funnel cloud action, but definitely saw swirling of the winds as the debris was flying all around. Actually, take a look at the gutter right here. This looks like a floor lamp that had to have blown from somewhere in one of these hotel rooms, either in the offices or in the hotel itself. So the debris is lying all over the place. A lot of people wandering around saying that was amazing and feeling pretty lucky about having gotten out of it. Some of them did evacuate from the hotel. Others say they were actually out on the street in cars driving around when they watched as these swirling winds came around. Some of them saying this is definitely a tornado. Others saying it sure felt and looked an awful lot like what they thought a tornado would be like. For some time, Charles, the storm prevented us from getting live pictures from downtown. So while we have you, we want you to show us as much as you can. Seems like a lot of debris right there directly behind you. That's right. Yeah, we're looking at, actually, this is something we've heard mentioned already, was the trees all along the street are filled with little bits of what mostly looks like insulation, which had to have blown out from someplace, probably from some of these shattered windows in these rooms that were not just had their windows broken, but also had things like insulation blown out. Take a look, and we've got drapes and curtains hanging down from that side of the Omni Hotel where the window has been shattered and the drapes blown out. Also, windows broken and a lot of insulation torn off at the bottom of this walkway. And as you look over towards the World Congress Center, again, more insulation hanging from the trees and all sorts of very small debris and lots of tiny pieces of glass all over the pavement. In fact, you can sort of see in the lights, the stuff is just glistening everywhere. This is all shattered tiny bits of glass all over the pavement of the sidewalk and the street.
Fox 5's CharlesMolineaux joins us live from Port Wentworth with the latest information. Charles.
And Art, in just a couple of minutes, a candlelight vigil is due to get underway here at the church right across the street from the Imperial Sugar Refinery. It was here actually a couple of hours ago that police detectives brought together the families of the 8 people still missing after the explosion at the refinery and told them that, yes, a 5th body has been found at the scene. Meanwhile, a growing list of local, state, and federal agencies continues its work at the scene. Massive cranes have been moving in to help shore up unstable areas of the scene as large-scale recovery efforts continue. So do small ones. Florist Gloria Rebenack delivers a loving tribute at the Imperial Sugar Refinery and a friendly XO hug and kiss at her shop.
It's rough. It's surprising it happened, and it's rough.
Around the town of Port Wentworth, flags have been lowered to half-staff. The devastated refinery keeps smoldering after an explosion and fire tore it apart, and firefighters, many of whom have friends at the plant, have been searching for the dead. Away shortly. Meanwhile, the agencies now on the scene investigating this incident now include OSHA, the U.S. Chemical Safety Board, the State Fire Marshal's Office, the ATF, and a whole assortment of others. Actually, they are still in the recovery mode. The investigative mode, however, they say they are now transitioning into, and that process will continue over the next couple of days. But the recovery effort does still have to go on, and that heavy equipment is going to be brought to bear tomorrow to try to get into some of the silo areas that firefighters have not yet even been able to look into as they search for victims. Reporting live in Port Wentworth, CharlesMolineaux, Fox 5 News.
Daunting task. Thank you, Charles.
Fox 5's CharlesMolineaux is live on the coast tonight with more on our top story. Charles?
And Russ, Riceville Beach is certainly feeling the impact of Hannah as it comes churning ashore. We're actually still probably 3 to 4 hours away from the full impact of the storm hitting in this area, but we're certainly noticing intense winds, high surf, as well as very heavy rain, although at the moment it's giving us a break. You can actually see some of the houses on the shore here, mostly boarded up, but actually several of them are still occupied as people have opted to ride this storm out and wait and see what happens next. Into the night with windows boarded up, homeowners along the coast battened down to endure Hannah's assault. The rough seas gave Coast Guard patrols a workout.
This is a storm surge chart for the Carolinas.
And emergency managers went on to 24-hour alert in New Hanover County's Emergency Operations Center. Local leaders declared a voluntary evacuation in the area this morning. All day, last-minute efforts to secure homes battled the rising winds, while some tourists and residents of vulnerable barrier islands cleared out.
We were hanging out at the beach, taking surf lessons and things like that, and now we've decided that the surf is no longer welcoming, so we're going to go back to the mainland.
Although a few diehards declare that with Hannah's minimal strength, there is no reason to go, and they are staying the night.
So we intend to stick it out. We're going to be here. If anything, come and get us, somebody. But we're going to be boarded up tonight, and we're going to ride the waves.
So a lot of folks here are saying, planning on holding out as long as they can, and really not concerned by Hannah, even as the storm and most of its impact begins to come in and really make itself felt. The Atlantic Ocean is right out that way and churning up pretty heavily, and the tide is in fact coming up, but is expected to crest, normal high tide, right around midnight, and then start to recede before the full impact of the storm hits between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning. Reporting live at Riceville Beach, North Carolina, CharlesMolineaux, Fox 5 News.
The crime is theft by taking, plain and simple.
Investigators allege Candace Rader and Valerie Cook went from being criminal defense attorneys to criminals themselves in defending their client Deborah Post back in 2002. Post pleaded guilty to murder charges for hiring confessed hitman Michael Razor to kill her husband Jerry Post. But a year-and-a-half GBI investigation and now a 7-count indictment for theft says that Cook and Rader illegally took payment from Post in the form of the couple's Douglasville home that she inherited from her husband after his death.
His wife had him murdered, and ultimately she pled guilty to murdering him, and she used his property to hire lawyers to defend her for killing him.
You're not allowed to take money from an estate where the person that you're taking the money from killed the person they're inheriting from.
Ms. Rader vigorously denies allegations, and she expects to prevail.
Rader and Cook's attorneys say they've done nothing wrong.
I don't know how it turns into a criminal case when it's been a civil case now for a number of years.
Prosecutors say the property sold shortly before Deborah Post pleaded guilty to murder charges, and that Cook and Rader should have known that as the proceeds of a murder, it was not property that she was entitled to or that she was in a position to give to them.
Absolutely, should have known. It's Law 101.
They were breaking the law.
Absolutely.
Did Valerie Cook, in her capacity as an attorney, take money she wasn't entitled to?
No. And that's what we'll be defending.
DA investigators say if this case goes to trial, the court will be hearing testimony from the admitted mastermind of the murder, Deborah Post, who is currently serving life without parole. In Douglasville, CharlesMolineaux, Fox 5 News.